get their skinners on it. These people are the worst kind of thieves and amoral entities that I know of. If anybody wants a good example of that, if you'll watch close on some of the newsreels, you'll see still pictures of Bush and Cheney. You take a close look into Cheney's eyes and tell me what kind of tombstones you see in there, if you see anything at all. And that should answer your question as to where that particular person is. The real white dragons, the real white hats, the gatekeepers, these people that are for real, I have the utmost respect for. And I'd walk side by side with them any old place they needed to go. I've offered my services to any of the real agencies necessary to promulgate the freedom of this country. I don't care. Any way I can be of service, I will be, including putting a big old target on myself and getting on the radio like this. So, sometimes yes, sometimes no. They're real. I am not a member at present of any group other than my one group of freedom. That basically is where I'm at right now. Okay?
Do you have any type of information about the government suppressing information about what happened in Fukushima or in Japan? The whole of the deal with that was done over a period of about 5 years. There is no documentary evidence concerning that anyone that I know of can come up with at this point. I do know that documentation on it does exist, and we're hoping to preserve that in order to prosecute those people involved with it. In other words, we're not going to give them a protective suit. We're going to give them a dustpan and tell them to get to work and at force of arms, push them into the area. You feel the radiation yet, dude? Huh? You getting the suntan yet? Come on, can you sweep this mess up? There was a report that came out of Japan about Japan evacuating 40 million people to the islands there on the north side of Japan. Have you heard any information on that?
The information I have in terms of Japan in toto, okay, the total thing is basically right now unsafe to live in. Now, this has not been told to the people of Japan to prevent panic, and I understand that, but the last report I just got, not only is Japan having real serious problems, but all of the islands in between Japan and the west coast of the United States, to include all of the Americas, mostly, a large portion of Canada, and across the next pond called the Atlantic Ocean into Europe. That's how far the radiation has spread. Now, the problem is not that it is radiation so much, but the type. The type of radiation that is being spread is of a type that one molecule can ruin an individual. Therefore, it doesn't take very much. Very light forms of this radiation will mess you up. And I'm talking permanently. It'll eat a hole in you, basically, or cause your cells to replicate to where you get a tumor the size of a gas can, wherever that may be. This was perpetrated by a collusive force. It's a combination of several agencies. The first one placed about 2.5 years ahead of time a small nuclear device in the crevasse. The second portion of this was that a second device was placed near the crevasse, and before they even asked for the money, this was an extortion attempt. Before they even asked for the money, they set the sucker off. So it was a sucker punch. And the designation was that Japan has a certain amount of money, and the bad guys want it. And that is exactly the reason. You remember the love of money being the low evil? Well, there you got, how many people have been killed, how much profit has been made, so these people don't steal something. That puts me in a position
position of looking at that, those individuals as pretty rotten, and they need to be dealt with severely. So that's my information on Fukushima.
I want to encourage everyone to try and organize your thoughts a little bit better, because we are asking some of the same questions twice. So what I would ask everyone is to go back and listen to the whole interview, because your question may have already been addressed. So if you could go ahead and take the time, just 5-10 minutes, and form your questions quite carefully, and that way every time we do a show, we're not firing the same questions at Drake. I'm sure he gets tired of answering the same questions multiple times, and I get tired of asking the same question multiple times. Drake, I'm sure that you're familiar with what Admiral Thrall of the U.S. Coast Guard, him and the Clintons were in that part of Japan 2 hours before the whole thing with the tsunami and the earthquake went on. I don't know what kind of information you have on that. It is part of the historical record, because we can find all the records of them being there and when they left. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I find it interesting, and so will everybody else, if they look at the rosters of visitation by official people, high-ranking financial individuals who paid visits shortly before that disaster. That will give you a consummate list of individuals directly involved in that disaster.
Okay.
And that includes the two people you mentioned. Does not include the Coast Guard.
Okay. Just an admiral in the Coast Guard.
Well, I know for a fact that they're not a part of, but they were required legally to make the trip, and that's a difference. The other two individuals were there for a specific reason, making hints and etc. with the people they met with. These things are not. There's a lot of the things that are not well known, and if somebody just decided to do a little vetting and do a little checking, it's pretty easy, because these people feel at this point that they're immune. They can do anything they want to, no matter what it is, no matter how public, and nobody's going to do anything about it. That is soon to be rectified. But in the meantime, if you look at it in terms of who visited who, at what time, and then suddenly a tectonic shelf off the coast of Japan jumps between 50 and 200 feet, and the Richter scale records show a sudden impact. This tells you that it was an explosive device. Just that simple. So, things become pretty obvious once you learn how to look past the BS and the quote State Department visit or an official visit by congressmen or senators or whatever to a certain area. You find that a lot of these things can be associated directly with happenings either during the time of the visit itself and or shortly after or before. So, you have to learn to be able to look at this and put two and two together in order to get an understanding. And it's going to be a conspiracy theory, and you're going to go, but that can't be. But there it is anyway. And not just once. This happens multiple times. This is something you need to understand and look at, and also look at who it was. When you start finding the same individual showing up here and there and everywhere and around over that way, and something funny always takes place somewhere around the time of that person's visit, then I would suggest that person probably has some sort of dirty connections, or is directly involved. And that's basically, it's an assumption, but that's basically the way it works. It's called plausible deniability. Everybody's heard that term that knows anything about the government. Consequently, this is what takes place. Oh, I wasn't there for that. I was visiting with his grandma. Yeah, right.
No, Drake, let me...
Hang on, I have a question. The caller from the 760 area, do you have a question, yes or no? This is not a listen call-in number.
Hello?
Do you have a question, 760?
Yeah, I don't think he answered my question. I asked the question earlier. He had such a long answer. I didn't know if that was a yes or no, if he was in with the White Dragons or the White Knights.
Yeah, he was answering that, and it will be in the archives when we get it up on the show page. So
I know, but it wasn't confirmed yes or no.
No, I'm not a member.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just, what you were saying, I've connected dots and looked at and asked questions a lot. There are obviously brick walls that I run into when asking questions because there's no answers coming forth. But if you look at who was in charge of New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, it was Admiral Thrall, Thrall. And then when you look at who was in charge of the Gulf of Mexico when BP had that oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, it was Admiral Thrall. And then who was in Japan right before it went off? 2 hours before it went off, in fact. Admiral Thrall. That's 3 times he showed up. So, connect the dots, folks. Do the research yourself. Put in Admiral in charge of Hurricane Katrina, Admiral in charge of BP disaster, and Admiral that was in Japan before Fukushima went off. You'll find it. It's there. It's part of the public record. I'm not making this up. It's not BS. Don't believe me, though. Go and find it yourself. It's there to be found. That's one thing I encourage everyone to do is keep asking questions and do your own research because it's there for you to find. So.
Exactly.
Did you? Go ahead. You ask your question now because I'm running.
No,
out.
I was asking if you had any further questions at the moment that are coming in from the chat room.
There was one from somebody about putting up frequently asked questions on your website. Is that a possibility?
We are working on that. Yes, that is something we are working on putting together so that they will be there on the website. It's just taking a little bit of time to compile all of the questions and weed through them all. But we are working on it.
Okay, Dave, before we get to that caller, Muggsy is wanting to ask questions of Drake. So, Muggsy, I am inviting you to unmute your microphone and ask Drake your questions, please.
Thank you. I have 2 questions that people keep wanting to know. Number one is we have a major problem with the banks. We know that they're going to go down. What about the people that have their money in those banks, and will they be protected?
According to what I've been told about the situation, what will happen is that everything will be zeroed out. And by that I do mean everything. Afterwards, there will be a RV, or revaluation, according to a combination of both personal and collateral accounts. The collateral accounts will try to attend to a combination of public works and making sure people have jobs, things of this nature. The private accounts will be more attuned to making sure that the people who would bring out emergency foodstuffs for those who don't have any food have gas for their trucks, things of this nature. The banks themselves, if they're not affiliated now, and there are quite a few who are not directly affiliated with the Federal Reserve or central banking system, those banks will not be taken down. That's something that some people need to understand. A lot of the small local banks tend to try to act as independently as is possible, and this is a big feather in their cap. Now, the thing is that the revaluation is going to be a different type of value in terms of currency. You're going to go from what we have now known as a debt system to what will be known as an equity system. That is an extraordinary difference to go from something owed to something that it has a positive value. you're probably looking at 2, maybe 3 times